We were started as the Arden Electric Railway by a group of trolley enthusiasts called the Pittsburgh Electric Railway Club, and we opened to visitors a few years later in 1963, and we're located along the former trolley route between Pittsburgh and Washington, PA. We've got about 50 trolleys and electric railway cars at the museum, about 20 of which operate, and about 30,000 visitors per year take the 4-mile scenic ride at the museum. And we have our 2023 Western Pennsylvania trolley calendars up on our website now. So if you're one of the folks who really enjoys the pictures in these, please check that out. Again, I'll put it in the chat in just a couple minutes, and you can order those online. They're $12, and you'll be set for next year. July has been a particularly exciting month for the new Welcome and Education Center and the Pennsylvania Trolley Museum. The steel has continued to arrive for our new building, and this past week we've been pouring lots of concrete, including new sidewalks and the bus parking pad over at the new building. So if you want to follow along with our On Track for the Future campaign, you can follow us on social media or visit patrolley.org to sign up for our newsletter or join as a member, and you can donate at patrolley.org/support. All right, and now I would like to introduce today's presenter, George Gula. Many of you probably know George or have been to a George Trolleyology program before, but if you don't know George, he grew up in both Philadelphia and Scranton, developing his trolley interests at a young age in Philadelphia. After graduating from Penn State with a degree in business logistics, he spent his entire career working in the transit business, first in Scranton and then in Pittsburgh, where he worked from 1975 until his retirement in 2018. He joined the Pennsylvania Trolley Museum in 1975 and currently serves as an operator and a conductor. He also volunteers in the archives and gives outreach programs. And he's been writing for Trolley Fair, our member newsletter, since 1977. And if you are a Pennsylvania Trolley Museum member, I did send out the virtual version of Trolley Fair today, so check your inboxes. Okay, and at the end of this presentation, we'll have a question and answer session with our presenter, but the chat box will be open, so please feel free to enter questions and comments throughout the show, and we can read through those either as they pop up or at the end. And please note, George's slides do have text at the bottom. If the Zoom controls are blocking your view of the captions, please don't worry too much, because George is going to talk about all the info that you need to know. So don't worry too much about that. It's just because that Zoom bar pops up with the chat notification. And again, this program is being recorded now, and it will be shared on our YouTube at a later date. We'll keep our microphones muted. We'll go ahead and turn our videos off now, including me. And we'll invite everybody to turn them on again at the end. All right, George, take it away.
Yeah, here we go. Let's do the screen sharing first. Okay, let's play. Hey, Kristen.
Yes.
I retired in 2008.
Oh, sorry, I have a typo in my notes.
Could, you could.
Well, I added 10 years to you there. Sorry about that.
You did. The other hand, what's today? The 19th? I got a birthday coming up, so I want to see cake in the mail. Well, okay. I got a couple caveats on this. I'm happy to be back, and welcome to everybody I know and I don't know. Pittsburgh had a lot of painted cars. They go back, as you see, to about 1900. So one of the caveats is I don't have them all. In fact, there's a few that I found today that I couldn't get in. But we have a lot, and I think we have enough that most of you will want to go to bed when we're done. Usually I have a lot more people up here. But since, I took photos and I had some friends that took them, it's actually a readable box here. I'm going to start with the Port Authority, and just to show you all this color. Everybody, of course, thinks about this. You walk up on the Route 35 tracks, or you trespass on the tracks, and in Port Authority, you never seemed to care, and you took a shot. And a lot of stuff was sitting in front of the shop. Now, you could go up here every day and it would be different. The cars in the background are stored on what we at Port Authority call the Mount Washington tracks, because that's how Route 40 went up the hill, and then it would go up through those woods and snake around and get up to the top of Mount Washington. It's kind of an early shot, maybe 79. And I'm saying that because there's the Philadelphia sweeper tucked in amongst the cars. And one of the flat front cars is there, and there's 17, I think 91. But we're going back a little way first. And that means some black and white. You'll have to envision this. But when I thought about it, all the stuff that ran in the early days of horse cars and streetcars seemed to be, from what I'd seen in black and white photos, very gaudily painted. So I put this one in, and it's not the clearest photo, but it shows the horse car in the north side from Pleasant Valley. And there's a Bentley Knight, actually 2 Bentley Knight cars coming down Perrysville Avenue. They were brightly painted too, and they operated via conduit. And so there's no trolley wire in this picture. By about 1902 or 4, I mean, Pittsburgh Railways settled on this very drab maroon scheme. And I guess if it was newly painted with stripes, gold stripes, it looked pretty good. And since we really didn't have automobiles on the street, the smog that you don't quite see here, that could be quite thick from the bituminous coal that was burned, didn't cause a problem. You'll see that happen later. When the orange shows up, about 1918 or 1920, a lot more cars on the street. Pittsburgh Railways is in bankruptcy, trying to develop a new image, trying to get its cars safer. So they painted up 3 different yellow cars in 3 different shades of orange. And they had a public contest, sort of a naming contest, vote for your favorite orange. And they put little messages like this, and your suggestions are welcome. Notice on the back, here's one I like. If I'm an operator, is the company really, sticking it to me, because they're saying, ask the operator, ask the conductor, he's our salesman. And he probably really was, but I don't know that the crew really wanted any more questions than they already normally got. This was painted up using Pittsburgh paints. It's the first streetcar that ever had aluminum paint, and that's a bright orange. And in the back, you see the typical maroon. Look at the difference, of course. So you have to call these cars painted cars. When they were new anyway, they would eventually all look like that. A lot of ads were thrown on like this. Boggs and Buell was a department store on, I believe, Federal Street in the north side. And in fact, the man named Boggs was part of the Harmony line, and he wanted his cars to go right past Boggs and Buell, so people could go shopping. They get off there before they go across the 6th Street Bridge. Now, the universities got involved. These were orange cars. Here's the car for Duquesne, and it was Ride the Trolley Week. And so they splashed Duquesne, and not to be outdone, of course, the University of Pittsburgh also got their emblem on the car as well. Somewhat different orange, and still it's Ride the Trolley Week. You can see the, excuse me. Now, I don't know anybody, I'm going to offer this. Anybody that knows anything about what went on in Pittsburgh in the early days, or remembers as we go through the 40s and 50s, please let me know so that I could add that to the information. As Kristen said, I grew up in Scranton and I grew up in Philadelphia, and so I never saw stuff like this. And of course, I wasn't around for this. So this is sponsored by a newspaper, one of many, Chronicle, and I don't know what the birdhouse contest is, though. But again, it's Ride the Trolley Week, and they took a high floor car, and they, no, I don't know what car house it's at. Now, safety cars, they count, I think, as painted cars, and they're usually painted up white. And they usually, here in Pittsburgh, painted each side a bit differently. And so here's the front of 4204. And if you go to the other side of it, ignorance invites injury. And that's true with a lot of our current drivers today on the street. Plenty of accidents, I think, because of ignorance. Here's the crew. There is one side of it, and National Safety Council is involved. And you can see some of the be safe, think before you act. In the back, I think it was Safety Day, and of course, always alert, nobody hurt. unless you jaywalk in front of the car. Here's a side view of the other side. Notice on the sides, different messages. Don't depend on others, look to your own safety. Take safety seriously, and it's no joke to get hurt. Now, what I don't know is if they ran this car around everywhere so people could see it, or was this car actually assigned to various routes? I don't know that. Here's another side of 4204. So it got repainted again, and there's something like 12 different ads, 10 to 12 different ads on the side of that car. That looks like it's at Homewood Shop. Not much happened though until the war came. By the time World War II begins for us in December 7th, 1942, don't forget the war is going on already in Europe for 2 years. We already had about 300 PCCs. We got them beginning in 1937. And the 1400s showed up in 1942. They were probably so far along that the Office of Defense Transportation could not stop it or reassign them. So we got those 1400s and the GE versions of it. So we get 100 cars, 75 are equipped with Westinghouse appliances. 25 always had GE. So you can keep the lines of communication open. And they went to 2 car houses, usually Ingram in the West End and Keating. And I think sometimes they were at Plummer Street. So those PCCs that were at the Keating barn, Keating had the crosstown line, and that went from the Allegheny General Hospital in the north side right through the busiest part of the north side, right up 5th and 6th Avenues in town. And more people probably saw these cars, the crosstown cars, than any other route, cars in any other route. So they started getting ads early. And the first thing we needed, of course, here's the war, we need money, and a lot of money. And you're going to have multiple bond drives. Here's the first one. We buy war bonds, followed by another one, buy more war bonds. And we're going to have 6 or 7 bond drives, I think, during the course of the war, and including one right after the flag raising on Iwo Jima, which really boosted everybody's spirits. And yet another one. Here's another World War II. Many of these cars were red, white, and blue. Patriotic colors. And every victory bond you buy helps hurry the boys home. They'll still be there for 4.5 years. Oop, apologize. Here's a color shot. Every so often, we find one in our archives. These was taken by Pittsburgh Railways. And there's the red, white, and blue livery I mentioned. Soldier on there throwing a grenade, let them have it. Buy more war bonds. So we're going to back the attack. And fortunately, this didn't have on it some of the language that we've seen with slang being referred to our enemies. Now, I was able to use this very pretty car. The big building is Allegheny General Hospital. The Red Feather. I found a little bit about that. There were already about 300 Red Feather groups in the United States by the time of the war. And they were basically community groups that tried to help people in their community. It would become, I believe, the United Fund in 1948. Truman would sign that into law. But this is during the war, and here's Allegheny General again. And it's encouraging people to give. One thing people wanted was to give blood. Apparently a lot of blood was needed. Our vets in hospitals here and overseas. And here's one, I'm sure that's a white car with red crosses on it. Give, give, give. And you're going to see a lot of these photos taken at the end of the crosstown line. That was on North Avenue at Sandusky Street, because the cars were waiting here and traffic was light and the sun was good. And so fans and professional photographers alike went over to this location. Here's another blood car. 1944. So the war is ongoing. It's car 1416, and give today, don't delay. And I'm trying to guess if this is a dark green car, khaki colored, maybe like a serviceman, a Marine's uniform. This was a really fancy car, that big cross in white and red. And they're telling you blood means a life, give blood. It's the life of a serviceman. And they need that blood. This is on Sandusky Street, around the corner from where they normally take them. Now, we needed men in all branches of service. And here is the enlist today in the Army car. It's 1421. Again, you can only imagine the colors, but there are so many different ads. This was a career at sea. This was for the U.S. Maritime Service, so not the Navy. These are the people who are working on the cargo ships and, making it sound good, career at sea, how nice. Well, we're in a war, guys. German submarines, punishing weather in the North Atlantic. I'm sure it wasn't that pleasant in the Pacific either. So it's not as exciting. It is exciting, but it's also terrifying. It's not what they're describing. Here's a side view of that red, white, and blue car. Quite fancy. They expended a lot of money painting up these cars. I found this slide and I was able to bring it back to a point, so you get to see the white, cream colored Pittsburgh Railway's top and blue. And we're going to want you to enlist in the aviation cadets and wear silver wings. They want all the guys 17, be a pilot. So yeah, at 18, you get to go be a real pilot. But in fact, then I found this. It's somewhat of a different slide. Notice there's a star there, but or they've repainted it again. Or maybe this is the new car and that one was the old car. But there it is, all in beautiful red, white, and blue. Now, the grungy, dirty car sure looks like one. We needed the women too. Women in the military, of course, certainly were not combat people, but they did a lot of support functions that allowed the soldier to be in combat. It usually took 10 people in the rear echelon to support one combat trooper. So we did want all branches of service, wanted them, including the WACs. And we found this. It's a rather beautiful car, very attractive, green, olive green, and yellow. And you could sign up in the Jenkins Arcade. Marines wanted women as well. And here's a group of personnel. Actually, somewhere different. It's on Duquesne Way. Up above is the elevated structure, the Pennsylvania Railroad that led down to the industries in the point. And this was joining the Marines, and then we found a color version. We have 5 or 6 colored versions. So, and here you applied in the Keystone Hotel building down on Wood Street. So, and again, see in the back, free the Marine. He can drive a tank, man a gun, down a plane, because the woman would be serving very, very important jobs in the rear echelon. I don't know how many of you know about 28th Division. Pennsylvania's 28th Division was a National Guard unit. It was called up in early and placed within the regular Army. Saw much of the European combat, was in the Battle of the Bulge, and was actually the first American unit to enter Germany. And I wish I could find a beautiful color shot of this. But by about 1944, they need men. They're recruiting for all branches, all jobs. And as you can see in the back, and aircraft and signal corps, infantry, artillery, they need everybody. At home, it was also, working at home was also very important. And many jobs in this country were considered war jobs. We're in 1944, obviously, looking at the car, and they want you to get a war job, get out there and work. get going and try to get everybody back. They wanted women at Pittsburgh Railways to be operators. They didn't have enough men. They paid 95 cents to $1.10, which seems like big money in 1942 or three, but the other industries, the mills, the factories generally paid more. Nevertheless, Pittsburgh got quite a few notable women, and a number of them stayed here in Pittsburgh, and one actually had a chance before she retired, that's Hattie Bartosik, to run an LRV car. And here was the nationality car, which I know I talked about during the World War II show, and the nationality groups were getting together. And I thought this was kind of significant because when I grew up in Scranton, all the nationality groups fighting each other. If you had the wrong religion, you were from the wrong part of Europe, the wrong border. I watched people kind of fight each other. Nobody was killing each other, but boy, they were really fighting each other. And it was the same with religious. So these ladies, all in their various ethnic costumes, are really kind of crossing a barrier here to get together and do that. Then the war ends. 1945 begins. And Pittsburgh Railways is they're hoping ridership will stay up. And in the meantime, worldwide, we have a Cold War starting. And so we still need men. The troops are coming home. Combat troops are coming home, but we still need men. So here's a U.S. Army Air Force car and U.S. Air Force, and they want you to apply so they can get more younger guys. But in 1949, Ed, here's a color shot joining the new Naval Reserve. And you get paid and you get to have a job in the summer. This is 46, right after, within a year of the end of the war. The Logan Armory, all the armories here want you to be a civilian soldier. So you combat guys, you have a lot of experience. How about joining the reserves? And we'll pay you to do that. And you can also join the reserves at the age of 17. John Bromley got me this one. Unfortunately, he's passed away now. Another volunteer car. This guy is crossed down almost at the end of the line. He's coming out of 6th Avenue. He's crossing Grant Street. He's going to go over to the jail and loop around there and come back on 5th. They still want the women to support the men in the armed forces. Notice all branches: the WACs, the Marines, the WAVES, the Women's Air Force, and the important nursing corps. And so this is still going on. Found this today. Sign up for either the regulars or the reserves. He's turning off Federal Street. And it's a very beautiful car. He's about 2 blocks away from the end of his line at Allegheny General Hospital, North Avenue at Sandusky Street. Veterans would come home, and what they're finding is jobs are closing down. Everybody was busy building tanks, machine guns, rifles, and the war is over. And all of a sudden, we don't need nearly as much. And there is unemployment. Now, here comes the veterans. I believe that the ability to go to college, the GI Bill was set up so that the veterans would have something to do while the economy reverted from war to peacetime. Maybe the congressman remembered the shanty town on the White House lawn and the World War I veterans arguing that they had nothing to do, no work. But they also, Pittsburgh Railways, notice, also encouraged, if you're hiring, to hire a vet. And by the way, how about hiring the physically handicapped? We don't really use that word anymore. It's disabled. And I suspect it's the physically handicapped included people that could never go into the military because of their disability. And of course, the combat veterans who came home not all in one piece, and they needed work too, and they were very capable of doing it. But they encouraged factories, employers to go ahead and hire. Here's another: hire the handicapped. They're using the word, I believe, disabled in the back. and handicapped on the front. And this car is turning off of 6th Street onto Liberty Avenue. It's a crosstown car coming into town. There's the Woolworths, which is no longer there.
Question from Ralph Saccone, why were most
Sure.
of the ad cars 1400s?
Well, that's a good question, but I think why, Ralph, is because the crosstown, and I think I mentioned the 22 crosstown, went through downtown and the busiest part of the north side, Federal Street, Sandusky Street, and the railways had figured out, they had determined that more people saw cars on the crosstown line because of where that line went than on any other route. You know, these cars were concentrated in downtown and the north side. And consequently, and then of course, all the 1400s that were GE cars were based out of Keating. And so I think those two factors convinced the railways that they should put these painted cars, take them out of Keating on a crosstown, you know, let everybody see them, let more people see them than you could say in Oakland or out in Wilkinsburg. Downtown is a very congested place. So that's my opinion about that. And I hope that answers your question, Ralph. Ed Miller was in town, very prolific photographer. And there's that north side I told you about, Federal Street, Box and Buell. It could be a really crowded place. I was told along East Ohio Street in the Saturday hours, morning shopping hours, that there was a policeman at every corner. It was that busy. And it's advertising a county fair, the 1954 county fair, and he's down by the Pennsylvania Railroad, probably around Isabella Street or Stockton, near the river and the railroad. That's what the car looks like. So Ed must have gone up there, and there it is. Rather pretty car. And a lot of fairs, of course, every year would be advertised. The fair wanted people to go. I understood this was a red and yellow car, and the fair always advertised some of the things that were happening. So here you have harness races. My dad would love that. Plus the regular fair and all the junk food. There above is the Pennsylvania Railroad elevated line along Duquesne Way. It's not yet Fort Duquesne Boulevard. Beautiful color at the county. It's a Allegheny County Fair car, and it's over Craft Avenue. Another beautiful red, white, and blue. And I don't know, you got to be as old as me in that age. But if you are, you'll remember Sky King and his niece Penny. And you'll remember Annie Oakley and her son, or it was a young boy named Tag. And I think that was her son. And these were stars in Saturday morning Western serials. Okay, so Saturday morning was more than cartoons. There were quite a few interesting serials. I remember Mackenzie's Raiders was one, Cavalry. So Saturday morning was fun. Here's the back part of that car. So the four lads are there. I'm sure it's a band of some kind or a singing group. But I was 3 and watching Philadelphia Streetcars in 1954. I have never seen the other side of this car. So the question is that woman Esther Williams, who is a swimmer who became an actress, is she coming to the county fair, or is that really something else? Because it doesn't tell you anything. And everybody except Go by Trolley, and everybody would take cars down, special cars, library cars, down to the Mesta stop and in Bethel Park, and you would get a bus, and for your last mile you would be shuttled to the county fair via bus. I dug this one out. I didn't know where this was, where I found it, but there it was in a box of unlisted, unlabeled slides. And well, it doesn't tell you the date. Beautiful car, blue, kind of a dark blue and a yellow. Old Bavaria. You're going to have Old Bavaria in their lollipop land, chariot races and shows. So, and there are usually, it seemed, there were TV stars at the county fair. This particular car, 1464, said we got a circus at an army show. It's 30 cents round trip to go from downtown all the way down to Bethel Park and the county fairgrounds, which are in South Park County.
There was a question from Jim
Sure.
Boylan. Were there any trolleys painted for the fair at Arden?
No, not that I'm aware of. For one thing, the fair at Arden disappeared. Well, it didn't disappear, but the trolleys disappeared in Labor Day of what, 53, I think. So I've never seen, put it this way, I've never seen a picture of an interurban car painted for the fair. And I think what they normally did, they got a bunch of yellow cars that were operating out of the barn at Tylerdale, and they would take them over to the fair. At the end of the fair, they were all laid up on the relatively long siding. That's why the siding at Arden is so long. It's on the original site of the long siding, and so cars would be taken over by the dispatchers as the fair ended, and they loaded them up. And I don't think any of the yellow cars down there were painted. I've never seen a picture of them, of that. There's 1948 car in the state police show, and I wonder if the state police show includes the famous horses. Color, 23rd Allegheny County Fair. So if I figure out when the fair started, this is 1960, so we'll figure out when the fair started, based on that. Obviously, somewhere before the war. I know the fair did not go on during World War II. There's the Market House in the back. We're near Federal Street and East Ohio Street. That's the Carnegie Library right behind the car. And up in Keating Car House, and gives you an idea of the yard and small shop building, is Gene Autry coming to the 24th Allegheny County Fair in 1961. Beautiful car there, very different from the last one. The last one having all that green and yellow. This one is more blue and white. And then I found this, and this is for, and there'll be a better one. This 25th Allegheny County Fair, this powder blue and white car. But why I put this one in is because look at the north side, Federal Street at Lake Hawk. Look at all the buildings, look at all the businesses that of course aren't there now. I think right about here, we're at the baseball stadium, PNC Park, which would be on my right. But that's what the car looks like, powder blue, white, with all this color. Joey Brown is coming. He was a star on, I believe, car 54. Where Are You? That was a serial. So that operated, usually that ran in prime time, wasn't a Saturday morning thing. And there is 26th. No, I don't have them all. Lassie's coming to this one, this beautiful red, white, and yellow car. And Joan Frank Fontaine. I can't remember what he did, but boy, the name sounds familiar. So he was also, I believe, a TV personality. Now, the police circus went on. I don't know if it's a regular circus or something sponsored by the police. And Tom Mix is coming. They say radio's Tom Mix, but I believe he was also a Western star at one time. And they're benefiting Police Widows, the pension fund. Here's a color shot of one of the police cars. Sky King is coming in Penny. So you wonder if the circus was very close to the county fair, and or do they make two trips? The clown on the front, the back of it is clown. Before clowns were scary. I don't know why clowns became scary, but people are scared of clowns now. And the back of this red, white, and blue car had a laughing, smiling clown. And I don't know what loop that is, and I don't know where we are. And if anybody can tell me they recognize that house, I'd really like to know.
Notes from the chat. Frank Fontaine was on the Jackie Gleason show.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. It's been a long time. I'm going to be 71 in 2 days. Another police circus car. And there's another Western that I remember in the mornings, the Cisco Kid and his sidekick, Pancho. And of course, he did what Roy Rogers and Trigger did, and Gene Autry, who had a friend. But it was a very interesting, it was a very good show. And both stars were Mexican, or Latin, if you want. I don't know what the proper term is, but they were both from Mexico. And it was a 1950s show, and it was unusual to have that, to have both stars not be American stars. And it was a very good series. And I don't think it's running anymore. Annie Oakley came to the police circus, beautiful blue and white car. They say that's on the 6th Street Bridge near Fort Duquesne Boulevard. So I can only imagine. And it looks like, based on the car in the back on the other bridge, we are on the bridge, and they're tearing the bridge up. They're tearing all the track up and rebuilding the deck. We also got into a lot of health. We promoted a lot of health opportunities, fight cancer, give money to fight cancer. Why cancer would be here in Pittsburgh, I don't know. With all the mills and the wonderful air. Another car that might be, this might be white, blue, and red. It looks like red. Supported the Allegheny County Cancer Crusade. And that's a 1950 shot. Now I'm looking at the sign on the back. It's a 1950 Cancer Crusade. Yeah, and on the front of the car too. So I'll change this later on. And then we have infantile paralysis, the March of Dimes. And, you know, many of us remember as kids, the March of Dimes. Some of us remembered being goofy and, you know, getting a bunch of dimes and lining them up like a military force. What we did when we were kids, what did we know? But March of Dimes was another organization trying to, you know, fight medical issues that we didn't know anything about back then. Remember, this is the 50s. Tuberculosis. You know, certainly we can treat this very effectively now. Back in those days, they might tell you to go to Arizona where the weather might be better. But other than that, tuberculosis was a real problem. Crowd disease, and Pittsburgh was a crowded city. Nice color shot. In the back, it says be X-rayed. So they regularly, I guess, X-rayed you for lung cancer. We're down on Federal Street, and downtown is in the background. And there's the park in the north side. And then the end of that park, about 1 block away, he's going to turn his right and head over to the crosstown end of the line, of course, North Avenue at Sandusky Street. Salvation Army had their car out. This is at the end of the line by the county jail. Little tiny street between 6th Avenue and 5th Avenue. I'm not sure if it's there now, to tell you the truth. And there was the Red Feather. Now the Red Feather is a regular national organization. I don't know what Give Enough for 92 means, but certainly the community chest was there collecting money to help people. And I was told this is 1948. But if anybody knows why we give enough for 92 what, don't know. Very pretty car here. We all know what the United Fund is. The United Fund is still here. It's on Federal Street at East Ohio, one of the busiest intersections in the north side. And I believe that's the Carnegie Library in the back, free library. Is what they used to call it, I believe. Very beautiful car here. Bright, almost a kind of a orangey gold with white. Crusade for Children. There's the help in the back, kind of scrawled on the car. Do your part for the Crusade for Children. And you'll see cars like 1464 continually being repainted because they're the North Side cars. They're the Keating Car House cars. And I wouldn't be surprised if certain cars out of the fleet were assigned to certain lines. Maybe certain cars that you see all the time, it's because they're always assigned to the crosstown line. Couple of cleanups. Paw Pit. Anybody living here in Pittsburgh long enough remembers they had a drawing of a fella that kind of looked like a Quaker tricorn hat, and they called him Paw Pit. And this is a let's clean up. I can't believe, is Pittsburgh really dirty? But you don't see any smog here. But these cleanup campaigns would go on. Here's another one, team up, clean up, keep our city clean.
Question, are the tracks still in front of the old Buell and Post Office in Allegheny Center?
Oh God, I think 20 years ago, they had kept a little bit of track somewhere over there, just as a historic thing. I don't think you were able to drive over it at that point. There was a pedestrian area, but everything else is gone over there. That area was so-called rehabilitated, and they tore out most of the major streets and intersections, and they put this big circle around a place called Allegheny Center. Allegheny Center had a mall which closed down very quickly, and stores like Sears went up into the North Hills, and I guess there are still apartments there in that circle. Just impedes traffic everywhere. You go around it, you stop at about 7 different traffic lights, but everything has been ripped up, concreted, changed. Now, I don't know if there's any track underneath East Ohio Street. It's hard to say. There is about 2.5 blocks of track in brick on Chestnut Street, which is opposite the 16th Street Bridge. And it's just a very interesting historical thing to see. Team up to clean up. There's Paw Pit again. So they, in the 50s, it looks like they had quite a few cleaning campaigns. Now, smoke must go. We all know Pittsburgh was a very smoky town, unlike us in Scranton that had no smoke at all, unless it was over the railroad yard. We burned anthracite, but everybody here burned bituminous. And I think truly that a large majority of the black smoke that you see in pictures did not come from the steel mills or some of the factories. That came from everybody burning coal to heat their home, plus the steam locomotives on the railroad and all the steamships on the river, the 3 rivers. And as that got cleared up, the smoke disappeared. But that was a big campaign. Traffic can be tragic. So, cross at the corners like people do still. Take it easy. This was a safety campaign, and almost looks as dark as the car that had the blood ad on it during the war. Can't be the same color. It's 1948. And it looks like the stripe in there is a different color from the car, the stripe around the belt rail. But there's the side view of it. Take it easy. And so there was some official sanctions for trying to get people to drive safer, which tells you about the driving. I can tell you, when I got to Pittsburgh, I can remember the driving out here, and I don't think anybody paid attention to this car. KDK got involved in this, and I believe this is a gold car. It's Christmas time, and those tags in the back are all the stars, the radio stars at that time. This is the KDK radio, 1020 radio, teaming up with Pittsburgh Railways, telling you have a happy holiday. We're extending our greetings, so enjoy it all. It's 1467. Another KDK car. And hey, safe and happy holiday from everybody at KDK. So notice on the top, we wish you a Merry Christmas 4 times spelled out. This is Craft Avenue. This car is a Craft. KDK seemed to like gold. This is their go car, KDK radio, and Pittsburgh Railways once again, teaming up. And of course, they're advertising their traffic and news on the radio. You can listen to traffic and news on KDKA. This is out in the city, but it's near Wilkinsburg. The switch seems to tell me it's near Tioga Loop at Oakwood Street. There's another KDK car, and I think this one may have shown up in one of our recent calendars. This one, keep on the go and in the know. So you got KDK radio and TV, and Pittsburgh Railways is also shown. And the outbound car is on Grant Street, and it's approaching Fort Pitt Boulevard. Another savings bond. We would have I remember when I was a teenager, it was still buy savings bonds, buy savings bonds. And this is a red, white, and blue car, 1463. It's out at Emsworth. So it's out of Keating, but it's not on the crosstown line. And there's the car that's definitely not even the north side, but pretty indicative of what that Bonds car looked like, red, white, and blue. That trestle, that low trestle is South Park Road. And of course, that trestle is no longer there. They took it out and they sloped the tracks down, and there's now a crossing here at South Park Road. And that was an early 60s project, I believe, because it was cheaper than replacing the trestle. And of course, the trestle is not particularly high, but trucks are getting higher. A lot of the red cars, the red and cream cars, got involved by just getting little ads that were pasted on. This is Sears Roebuck ad in the car, I think it's on Fifth Avenue. You had a lot of this. It was very easy to do. Just use that area below the belt rail. Now, wouldn't I like to win a free modern home? Well, there was a home exhibit, a home show at the Hunt Armory, and you could go over there and get a completely furnished new home. I don't know how you're going to win that. I don't know. Almost looks like a yellow and blue car, but I'm just guessing based on what I've seen. I don't know what this ad's all about. Pittsburgh's prosperity is your security. Okay. It's painted all around the sides of the car, but I don't know what the campaign was all about. Anybody know? Again, finds out, let me know, because I'd love to know more about the origins of some of these ads. But there it is again, down by Woolworth, starting from 6th Street onto, remember there's a 6th Street and a 6th Avenue in Pittsburgh, and it's going on to Liberty, heading towards the railroad station for about a block, and then it'll turn onto 6th Avenue. Nope, wrong way. That's my fault. Before the Freedom Train, I remembered in the 60s, somewhere late 60s, there was another Freedom Train. It's about 1948 that ran, I think. And I'm sure it went around and it had patriotic stuff on it. And don't forget, we're in the Cold War. And I almost think this may be red, white, and blue, but it's hard to say. Look at the bottom skirting. I'm not sure if that's any of those colors. But the Freedom Train, a Freedom Train, came to Pittsburgh. And if you want to go to the Carnegie Museum, you can see people in pictures. It's free. So, but we don't know if that means movies or just people's pictures. But the Carnegie was advertising. We had public service, and they paid. And of course, Pittsburgh needed the revenue. Ed Miller took this Urban League car. About an hour ago, I found a better side shot, and I'm sorry, I did not have time to get it in. And there's the 6th Street Bridge in the background, and the cars heading in, turning onto Liberty Avenue from 6th Street. Rosenbaum's was one of several downtown department stores. It's Pennsylvania week. This would happen a couple times, and it was usually in the fall. And Pennsylvania has everything. And it probably did. Back then it had streetcars. So what more do you want? Streetcars, Kabasi, Pirohi. Good. Here's a United Fund car. Kind of a reddish maroon and orange. This is Keating, parked in the weeds down by Keating. But it is an operable car. That's just what Keating looked like. And that would run around to advertise. And the United Fund would come back. The Rolling Rock races all the way out at Ligonier. Popular place even back then. And this one is by the Carnegie. It's near East Ohio Street again. That's the Carnegie Free Library in the back, Carnegie Hall. Also, don't forget, the libraries usually had a music area as well, an auditorium where performances could be played. Civil defense.
Prosperity, according to Larissa, prosperity is your security appears to be a tagline of the Pittsburgh Chamber of Commerce at the time.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Larissa. I appreciate that.
And actually, we had a question earlier. The Ligonier car reminded me if there were any, let's see, if there were any Washington or Charleroi local cars specifically painted for local topics.
Well, if not growing up here, if there are, I have never seen photographic evidence.
Okay.
I think that's the best answer that I can give you. Art Ellis might remember. He's only 102, but, and he was here photographing trolleys in Pittsburgh before the war, and he saw quite a bit. So, but I've never seen photographic evidence of that. You know, here's civil defense, and of course, you know, a lot of us that were in the 1960s remember the bomb shelters that were allegedly placed in buildings and schools that were supposedly stocked with food and water. I don't know how effective they would be, but that was all part of civil defense if we were attacked. There's a handicap car behind this one. Buell. You can take a vacation treat at the Buell Planetarium. And like now, they have sky shows, and you can learn all about our universe, except now that those wonderful pictures are coming back from space, I'm sure the Buell is going to have some very interesting displays up there. The Theater of the Stars. Visit the Theater of the Stars at Buell. It's that little street between 6th Avenue and 5th Avenue. The car is laid over here. Wasn't very big. You can only put one car there. It was near the jail. But they had sky dramas every afternoon and evening. So, and there's a shot of that car on Stanwick Street. And I think he's approaching Duquesne Boulevard, Fort Duquesne Boulevard, and bus in the back. Well, the orange bus looks like Pittsburgh Railways bus. The other bus is one of the 32 or so independent bus companies that competed with Pittsburgh Railways. And the way the sun looks, it's the afternoon, late afternoon. We had a lot of music, and Civic Light Opera contributed to Pittsburgh Railways coffers. They had several cars out. And apparently, look, you went to Pitt Stadium nightly for the opera. So as long as it didn't rain, I guess it sounded pretty good. It was under the stars. Pretty neat. This one, I thought this was Coming Home on Wings of Song to Pittsburgh, a Civic Light Opera car. And I only could envision what this was. We're on 6th Avenue, right past Liberty. It's just turned off of Liberty Avenue. And then I dug this up. Not the best picture, but apparently it's blue with gold and white lettering. This is over in the north side. And again, there's Carnegie Library, Carnegie Hall, and we're at East Ohio Street. This monstrous intersection of track is at East Ohio Street. So that's what that car looks like. And another Civic Light Opera car, again, they're at Pitt Stadium, June to August. The biggest in entertainment is what it says. And I can't read any of the music bars that are painted on the car. Maybe they can't either. And there's a color shot. I mean, kind of close. It's a dark shot of, well, it's dark blue and white. Music Under the Stars, Pitt Stadium. So they seem to be down in Pitt Stadium quite a bit. And that's the park over the north side. Usually we're shooting from that sidewalk looking at the door side, but this actually shows you the park in the background. Still there.
A funny comment from Michael Buckton in the chat. It's amazing to think how many layers of paint these cars had.
Well, I wondered about that. I can't believe they sandblasted all of this stuff. Unless they took them to Homewood. They might have, but it's expensive to cover all the windows. I should have moved these two around. There's another Civic Light Opera car. But I don't know if it's the same one, but notice on the door side, it's painted differently. We're on Sandusky Street at East Ohio Street. The Symphony got in the act too. They had their white car, and support our Symphony. You know, if you look in the back, they need $425,000. So this is back in 61, and then a few years ago they needed more than 425,000. But nothing's changed. This is up at Keating, and there's a side view of that over on North Avenue. Different, but you can see the 425,000. So, and it is a great symphony, and anybody that goes and listens knows they produce wonderful music. Baseball, apple pie and Chevrolet. Here's the baseball card. Take the trolley to the ball game. This was Pittsburgh Railways telling you, why walk across the bridge? Take the trolley, And of course, they played over in Forbes Field anyway. So get to Oakland. Just walk a block and you'll be down at Forbes Field. And it was a yellow car with black lettering, as you can see. There's another shot of it. That's the blind side, as I call it. And they're telling you, go buy trolley. 7754 car. And I think what I'm looking at, because of Loblaws, is that car is by Brentwood Loop, and he's going to come out, and 7754 is going to come a little bit more in, and then he's going to turn into Loop. Because at one time on Bronzeville Road, the Carricks ran up there, but also the 7754s ran all the way down Bronzeville Road. We didn't do, Pittsburgh Railways did not do much in the line of political ads. This one, though, did get on the car, and it was about 58 or 9 when Robert Dugan was running for district attorney. And never seen a color shot of it. This is the only shot I've ever seen of a Pittsburgh Railways car with any type of political ad. Toward the end, of course, any revenue will do, even if we advertise the competition. So there's Plymouth, advertising the Plymouth, and also Chryslers. Now, I did not get the Dodge car in. I knew where it was. I just didn't get it in, but there is a blue Dodge car, which will wind up getting in here eventually. But downtown, it's the Chrysler dealers are all getting together, and you want to buy a Chrysler.
Comment from Ray Janoska, that was Brentwood Loop.
It was what? I was Brentwood. That's what I said. Yeah, thank you, Ray. Yeah, I did say it was Brentwood. Yeah, because Loblaws is there. At least this one did not advertise the competition. So you guys know I didn't get the Dodge car in there, but I know it exists, and exists. But this was the Mohawk Airlines car, and I'm gathering it was a shorter flying airline, because they said go to upstate New York. This is where I want to be. But this one is just across Grant Street. He's on 6th Avenue, and a lot of you guys don't remember, but Bigelow Boulevard came out here. There's a little triangle in the middle of there over the left, and Bigelow Boulevard. This was how you got up onto Bigelow Boulevard before all that construction took place downtown. Here's the back end of it on Federal Street. And so it's a very pretty car, gold, black, white lettering. Chrysler. Need to move this one around too. It's not the best shot, but it does show me the side view of that. There's the 26th County Fair car in the back. So this guy's just left to take his inbound trip to downtown. 14, I believe 67 again. And we all know a little bit about this. The Wabco car during the time of Skybus was purchased by the Westinghouse Air Brake Company and used to test various types of transit equipment on the car. And when they were done, the car came down to the Trolley Museum in this paint. I haven't seen it for a long time, but my guess is it's somewhere packed up in a building still in this paint. Don't forget, in the 50s, we saw 1467 painted up for something else. May Stearns. I know what May Stearns was a local department store. And, you know, it was 1956. It's all over the car. And they do green stamps. I don't know if you're old enough like me, you'll remember S&H green stamps. And I believe this is Kraft Avenue because next to it is a 76 car. And that was based out of Kraft. So here is one of the high floors that was used up as an ad. I'm sure this did not operate in regular service, but it was running around, I guess, just like the Cordic car. Now, I don't know the total story about Reach Cordic. My understanding, at least at one time, was that he was a Trolley Museum member. And the first time I ever saw Reach Cordic, after I arrived here in 1975, he would host a TV show that ran movies, and he was out in California at that point. Apparently earlier, though, he was a famous radio star, and he moved to KDK from, I think, Channel 4, but I'm not sure about that. So I have to read the history on that. And he had this car painted up, and it ran around advertising his move, and then it was used for charters. And here it is, Kraft Avenue. And with all that fancy scroll work, you have to wonder, I mean, did they spray paint it? Did they have to cut stencils? I don't know who did that, or did a good artist do that? But that's a lot of fancy work on that car. Now, I know there are more, although I know you guys probably have to get to bed too. So let's go to the Port Authority. You know, Port Authority took over, and there was a whole bunch of stuff running around in red, cream, and rust. And over time of the cars the Port Authority obtained, and they didn't get all of them. They didn't want over 100 of Pittsburgh Railway's cars. They would paint them in this standard, what became the gray, red, white standard. This is Mount Lebanon. So you've just come out of the loop. Today, that loop is a little parklet with a fountain. But back then, that was the loop, and it was much wider, I think, there too, at Alfred Street. But here's the inbound car in pretty much standard Pittsburgh Railways or PAT paint, Port Authority paint. And they would eventually start painting more and more of them like this. And then about 1973, the company, the property wanted to spruce things up, and they hired a marketing firm, Peter Mueller Monk, which was local, and a fellow named Love worked there. And he came up with some ideas. His 10-year-old son said, well, why don't we put a sunburst on it? And then the kid went to school. It was in Mount Lebanon, and the school teacher said, oh, an art project. And so there were a number of drawings made by the kids, but the sunburst idea stuck. So they brought it to the board, and the idea was, we'll paint 3 cars like you see here, orange, white, and orange, 3 more in red, white, red, and 3 more in yellow, white, yellow. And they brought up the idea of the sunburst car, the sunburst car, the psychedelic car is what they called it. And I have a story somewhere, and I can't find it. It's somewhere in a computer with millions of files, but the board voted on it, and one of the board members said, yeah, we'll do it. We'll have these different cars, but we need the psychedelic car. And later on, we'll see that. So 10 cars were painted up, and that began the painting era. Here's one of the red, white, and red cars. It's up on Beachview on Broadway. Not very far from Joe Brantner's house, our senior instructor. And he's an outbound car, probably closer to Pauline Street. And they started painting. I remember this car when I arrived in 1975, and you can see 77, the yellow, white, yellow car. We'll see later 7754 is there. It's next to the Marriott car, the green and red one. I remember the sunburst or the rainbow car, Pittsburgh Someplace Special. And you'll see the top of the sunburst car sitting there behind the green and red Marriott car. So you get an idea of what the top of that car looked like. To paint it, cost over $100,000 more than the normal paint job, the red, white, red, or the yellow or orange, white, orange. So they only did that one. And, but this powder blue car for the All Hit Music station 14K, I remember seeing it for a year, and I had a crummy camera, one of the Instamatics, like a lot of us did, and it was gone by the time I could afford a 35 millimeter. So this was one of my Instamatic shots before the plastic lens got really crappy. You can see them on incline in the back. That's the WDVE car now. So 1410 is gone and WDVE is in. And I put this in because it's pretty interesting. When I got here, Library and Drake cars came up Grant Street, Liberty, and down Wood. The 42 operations came up Smithfield over 7th Avenue and down Grant Street. And some of the expresses turned on 4th Avenue between Smithfield and Grant. Now, there was also a loop that went around the jail. So 4th Avenue and Ross Street and Forbes Avenue. And another loop was up here. You can see the Pennsylvania Railroad Station over on the right. And you could come up, and instead of making that left, you see the tracks going left onto Liberty Avenue. One single track went around the Greyhound station under the railroad and over 12th Street, back down Penn and in front of the Greyhound station. And this was used very infrequently. And in fact, my manager, Harold Norris, actually said that the agreement with Port Authority was that track needed to be removed, but they haven't done it, and they're not saying anything because it could be used in emergencies. And when downtown seemingly, I don't remember the reason it was closed, but I remember being up here and all the cars on the 4th of July went around this loop. And it's the only time I ever saw it happen. There's our WDVE car in the middle of this, and behind it is Pittsburgh Paints. 1704 Cedar Junction was the Salvation Army car. And behind it is 1791. And of course, the tunnel is now paved, so buses and trolleys can go through it. I never saw an ad on this car. This is 1705. It seemingly reminded me of Gulf oil colors, blue, orange, white. And I never saw an ad on it, but it ran around like this for years. And as you can see, I saw it in 75 painted this way, and there's a pantograph on it in 83, and it's still clanking along. It's inbound. It's entering Bog Siding. It's going to go past Bog Stop and then arrive at the junction. There were 3, 1710, 1726. I can't remember the other one, but they were yellow, white, yellow, green, and they all had park and ride ads on them. Park and Ride with Pat. And after the Park and Ride ads disappeared, they all retained this color almost until the end. They just stayed like this. This is the one after the ad is gone, 1710. And it's up at Mount Lebanon, and it's basically just past Bower Hill Road, past the Safety Island, and it's heading towards Piermont and Dormont Junction. I like this shot. Steve Zabel, New York guy, he got up, I don't know, I never thought about climbing up on the interstate and doing this, but people did, I guess. And so here are 2 of the 3 original colors when the painting program started: a yellow, white, yellow, and a red, white, red. And you're looking down Fort Pitt Boulevard, and this inbound car in the front is going to be turning onto Grant Street. It's about 1980. You can see them on heading towards the Ohio River in the background. One for the thumb. Steelers had already won 4 Super Bowls when I got here. And that was always the phrase around here. One for the thumb. They wanted number 5. I don't think they have yet got number 5. But one day this car showed up, and it was the terrible Trolley. Because remember, announcer Myron Cope, Steeler announcer Myron Cope, the guy that used to say, "Oi," used to talk about the terrible towel. And you would see the stadium when some big play was going on, all these yellow towels would be waving in the stands. So this became the terrible trolley, and we never got one for the thumb. But people probably did think it was a terrible trolley because these PCCs, these 1700s, without the open windows, tended to be hot in the summer. And the air leaks in the car meant they were pretty cold in the winter. In fact, at one point, as a checker in the schedules department, it was so bad outside, so cold, that we were just taken off of our street shifts, checking shifts, and assigned streetcars. And I couldn't wait to get off that streetcar because it was colder in that car with the air moving than it was outside. It was near zero, I believe, back there in that day. Here it is. I don't know what the numbers are. I don't know if they're teammate numbers, but there's the Super Bowls that they won, and the one we still haven't won, of course, is not there. Steelers symbol down there behind a terrible trolley sign on the right. It's a black and gold car, of course. Now, this didn't run very long. I saw it, and then it was gone. But Meadows painted a car up for some of their races, and I don't know, maybe it was just a short-term set of races. But the Adios Pace was one of them, and I was able to find it. I never found it on the street. When you work in Manchester, by the time you get to downtown, it's about 5:30, and everybody's gone, and the light's gone too. But I did find this on a Saturday in October, nice day, and shot it down the tunnel. And there's another shot of that. Kristen, there's your car. It's coming up. 1794 with all of that paraphernalia on the roof. There's the Philadelphia snow sweeper, former C-145, and which I think is now down at the Baltimore Museum. And there's a top of one of the park and ride cars next to the sweeper. So, I don't know why they paid park and ride on the top. I don't know how people are that tall, can be that tall, but it's there, I guess, if you're looking out a window. In 1718, they would do this, the white area lent itself to small advertisements, and this advertised Kitty K's great skate. But it became prettier. 1718 became the cash stream car, obviously some kind of money thing. And it was painted up as per the instructions of the company in this beautiful silver and white scheme with red and white, or red and blue ads, and very pretty. You could buy a car and get it painted for a year. You just provided the information and the money. And many companies took advantage of this. There's another shot of it. This beach view, he's just past Coast. I think Coast is that little street sign in the back. Off-road car, obviously it's evening. I can tell by the sun, and he is finished for the day. And they haven't torn up the street yet because all of the original brick is still there. I do remember this car, the Kodak Master Photo, and I think Master Photo had a couple of different stores in the area, and it had this beautiful, white, yellow, blue, red, white car, and it said on it, of course, Kodak Master Photo. Now, 24-hour service, does that mean Kodachrome slides? I really doubt that, but I'm sure it was developing photographs. If you look over on the left, there's a Route 49 car heading up the private right of way to get to Warrington Avenue, and he'll come down Arlington. There's another shot of it turning from Grant onto Liberty Avenue, Grant Street on Liberty Avenue. Federal building in the background, railroad station, the Pennsylvania station off to my left, though. You can almost hear the squeal of the car in this picture. About 1974. It was an early paint job. It was only painted it within a year after the Sunburst car.
A couple slides back, Kevin Murphy says Cash Stream was the name of a very early ATM network.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kevin. I appreciate that very much. I'll put it in there. I'll write it down. Grand Street, very busy place. One of the typical yellow, white, yellow cars. And you can see that even without an ad, this type of car brightened things up considerably over that gray, white, red Port Authority scheme that was first developed. Although if you look beyond the cars and the safety element in the back, one of those ugly gray cars is actually back there. It's a busy place up here at the Steel Building, and it's probably rush hour. Look at all the people lined up for their streetcars and their buses behind the trolley. My guess is based on the sun, this is evening rush hour. But this became this American Express car. So it got all dolled up. Don't leave home without us, of course, is what American Express always says. And they developed this, blue, orange car, white top, red belt wheel. And I thought it was a very pretty car. And the paint lasted long after the ad was taken off. This was a temporary wide down at Castle Shannon when they were doing work. Constructing the light rail. They had to relocate things, and it was a bus transfer back here, and there it is. There's a nice 3/4 view of that car. I don't have an American Express card, so I always leave home without it. But and this is down at Killarney. I would stand at Killarney because by the time you got out of work and got down here, you still had sun. And a lot of places in Pittsburgh, shadow develops early in the rush hour. It made shooting in downtown quite difficult. Now there it is without its ad. There's the sweeper, former C-145 behind it. Painted orange in Philadelphia. It's a PTC sweeper. And at one time, some of these cars were also painted orange. And then for a little while, it became the Bethel Park Centennial Trolley for about a year. And here it is in the new South Hills Village yard. You can see some of the light rail cars behind it, the Duag cars. And after that, it ran around looking just like this without the logo or the writing. Another park, as we're going chronologically, it's 1726, another park and ride car. It gives you a good idea of what that looks like. And for you bus fans, I remember those things showing up behind it, very different from the GMs. Then there was the American Red Cross. Fort Pitt Boulevard was always a good place to shoot if you wanted this type of shot, because you had sun. You were away from the caverns of the tall skyscrapers in downtown. So here was 1727, celebrating 100 years of Red Cross. And I always loved looking at these pictures and looking at the bored riders in the days before cell phones on the car, just stuffed in one of these hot cars, hoping to get home. This beautiful thing showed up as they were building new buildings for the second Renaissance downtown. To Chatham Center was constructed, and they were leasing it. And so they had this very beautiful car, 1728, painted up, wonderful diagonal stripe. And I thought it was a very attractive car. And it ran around for about a year. There it is, a rear shot of it, but gives you a better idea of the Chatham Center car. And it's a usual crappy Saturday. You want to go out and take pictures on Saturday. It's always looking like this, unless you have something else to do. Then it's sunny. 1729, I believe, was one of two Pittsburgh National Bank cars. This is another car that would run around later without its ad. It's a blue, red, white, red, blue car. And the ad's going to come off. The ad notice is really only in the white area. So it probably was easy to repaint that. And it would just run around with this very pretty color. There it is, seen running along the busway from the interurban line. And you can see some of the other pretty bland equipment, yellow cars, red cars, Port Authority gray car in the yard. The only thing of interest is that park and ride car, and there is 1776 with the white stars on, or on the blue background, but we'll see that later on. That's the South Hills Junction area in the background with the old administration building. One time interurban station with some of the buses that shuttled from there to various hilltop communities. 1730, this came out of a newspaper because the first time I ever saw this car. The newspaper, the Post Gazette, called it the Golly Trolley. And there it is. This was the first time it was new. And it was in November of 1972 when this car came out. And again, I mean, my understanding was it had to be painted several times until the paint actually held. And you can see the sunburst or Trolley, and later you'll see the words on it, Maud Desire, which would be the name of it. Now here's a top side view from the interurban line. You get to see the top of the car, the yellow fan area, and all the sunburst stripes, fanning out from the sun itself, the trolley sun, which is partly covering the center doors. I remember if you look at the logo under on the front, under the number 1730, that was Pat's smiling bus driver. And the rehabilitation program is still going on because there's at least 4 kind of messed up air cars that run in tripper service that have not yet been rehabilitated. There's a very beautiful shot of 1730, and he's heading back to the barn. Evening shot. He could have been on 4238. In the back area there where that automobile is, they all stopped. They all went around the yard and they stopped, and the tills were pulled before they went into the yard.
Some comments in the chat from Ray Janosko and Ralph Saccone. They used the fluorescent paint on it originally, and it faded quickly.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate that. Kristen, it's not far from where you live. This is along Pennsylvania Avenue at Poplar. And the 38A was called a dinky. Some of the 4238 cars were extended down to Castle Shannon after the yellow cars shuttle. It had been a yellow car shuttle between Mount Lebanon and Castle Shannon. Well, that disappeared around 52, and they extended selected trips down to Castle Shannon. And eventually that would be only in the rush hour. And here it is crossing Poplar Street. I love this. I bought this. Actually, Tom Castro bought one too. And I scanned his because I can't find mine. There was a Burger King downtown. I hated those hamburgers. I don't know. But how likely is it that you're going to find the Burger King car passing Burger King and on a typical Pittsburgh rainy day? But there it is. There is 1731, the Burger King car. And of course, Burger King and 1731 both are no longer there. Pittsburgh Business Times painted up its ad on the white part of this attractive blue-white, dark blue car. And it's down at Castle Shannon in that temporary loop. And the Jolly Trolley. See, there was a Golly Trolley, but there really was a Jolly Trolley. Kind of a chartreuse, I guess that is pinkish, white, pinkish car. Now, my understanding, in some brief discussions with Harold Geisenheimer, who was a general manager who hired me back in 1975. And people in Port Authority were not happy with people that like trolleys. And they coined the term, or certainly early on used the term trolley jolly. So I was a trolley jolly, Ray, Ralph, we're all trolley jollies. And then came Harold Geisenheimer, and he became the general manager. And Harold, was the kind of personality that you didn't tell him unless you knew what you were talking about. You didn't tell him what to do. I believe he was also a high officer within the National Guard. And this guy really knew a lot. He was very good friends with the executive director, John Morrow, and they both worked very closely together. And one of the early cars to come out was the Jolly Trolley in this marvelous color scheme. And I used to hear people on the streets just commenting about how cute, oh, the Jolly Trolley. But you know, this was Harold's way of sticking it to the people that didn't like the Trolley fans. Harold was a Trolley fan, and I'm your boss. So stick it up and, you know, suck it up and grin. And this thing ran around for quite a long time. Even after the Jolly Trolley paint was gone, it maintained this color scheme. I always liked this. The Schwabels, I never ate the bread, but one day I saw this, the Schwabels bread car, giant bread. So it must have been a big loaf. This down in South Hills, tunnel yard. And it was a very, very colorful car, yellow with all this blue and, you know, red and clowns, because nobody was afraid of clowns back in 1982. And there it is. And with pantographs now coming through South Hills Junction. And the junction, as you see, is under construction for the light rail operation to come. I think that's 1750 behind it. They have the new signs, the 47 series signs, but that's a shot of Schwabels. Now, really quick, 1737, you know, they just, the volunteer, I don't understand volunteers. We need you. Volunteers for what? We don't know. But they needed you, and they put this small ad on the side of 1737. And there it is at the junction in the winter of 1981. I love this car when it came out. I love this. It came out about 1981, this beautiful green and white car, yellow and green lettering. I mean, I used to try to hunt this thing down. I was always in the wrong place, but not this time, not on beautiful sun in the late summer, 1981. And there I was shooting a whole bunch of stuff coming down Fort Pitt Boulevard. Same shot, but you got the picture of the car. There it was, beautifully lit. And that's what it is. Jenkins Arcade, of course, no longer there, but it did have a lot of offices and shops at one time. It was down on Liberty Avenue. And there, I thought this would be an interesting shot. Not that it shows that much of the car, but in 1984 in April, when they were closing Tunnel Yard and Tunnel Shop, they were transferring stuff out to the village, the South Hills Village, and there were dead cars, cars on shop trucks, and this unfinished 4000, and they had to be towed. And 1738 had the job of towing one of these 4000s. It's in a sea of buses, as you can see. A lot of drivers would come in, pull in for lunch reliefs. 34 series cars where buses would show up here. They were shuttles and Hilltop. So a lot of activity here. 1739. This beautiful powder blue car with all the pink and the yellow. FM 93 WPNT, Pittsburgh Music. Station I probably never listened to. But it was a gorgeous car, and it showed up early in 81 or very late 1980. Here it is coming off the Smithfield Street Bridge on a typical Pittsburgh cloudy day. You can see some of the skyline of Mount Washington has changed since 1981. Here it is. No, there's my favorite spot again. Beautiful light, but a good way to document this car. It supposedly has relaxing music, so maybe it's not a punk rock station. And again, you can look at all the people, and you know, it's like they're tired, they're sleeping, you know, they're stuffed in that car. You can tell they're standees, and it's probably hot even in October. I love this. They painted this car bright red, solid bright red, and lettered it for Alexander's Graham Bell. I was never there. It was a restaurant that existed for a short time in Market Square. And the novelty was that there were telephones at each table. And you could pick up the phone and you could call somebody else at another table. Now, why the proprietor thought that was a good thing, I don't know. I'm sure a number of customers didn't like that idea. Alexander's Graham Bell disappeared and the car ran around briefly in its red. Here it is again. See people getting on the shuttle buses. And that's a back shot of it. And this red car was ideal for a Clark candy bar car. Here we are in a kind of a Christmassy scene up in Beachview near Neal Avenue. And they painted this car for Clark, which was a local candy maker. And I love the Clark bars. And they no longer make the real thing. There's sort of a, it's in Altoona now. The company bought them and sent it to Altoona. And they make sort of a pseudo Clark bar, but it's not the real thing. Here it is. And it sure looks like a candy bar wrapped up, doesn't it? It's quite a beautiful place here at the loop behind the administration building in South Hills at the junction. And there it is at Washington Junction with its pantograph pulled down. There was a loop at Washington Junction. So if you were a car coming in, say from Drake, you had to come and get into this loop, turn around and go back down the 47S, the tracks to get to the village. There's just another shot of it. That's crossing Castle Shannon Boulevard. I know it's a little dark. It was the film. Excuse me. And I just saw somebody on Facebook made a model of this car. It's very accurate. The neighborhoods. Another great thing about Pittsburgh is its neighborhood. So I don't think they're trying to sell anything unless they're trying to sell a house somewhere. And there it was sitting there behind 1761. We'll see that very soon. The 1744 was the Pittsburgh Paints car. So that car, remember, Pittsburgh Paints provided the aluminum paint for the yellow car back around 1920. And here we are still producing great paint and taking advantage of that white bar there to put a very multicolored word, Pittsburgh Paints. Some chicken doing the painting. Here's one I always loved. Actually, I love both of these. 1744 came out one day and it advertised the Freight House shop. So not Station Square, but next to it. Station Square was like considered at that point when it was new, the P&LE Railroad Station, but next to it was the old Freight House. And that had become a whole group of shops. My understanding is it's pretty empty down there now, but at one time it was quite a novelty. We'll talk about 1753 in a minute, but look how pretty that one is too, with its rainbow. Here it is, the portrait shot, bored people and all on the car. Well lit, beautiful. And I just love this car. It would eventually run around without its ad. It would keep this color for years. Does Pittsburgh drink beer? They had several of these cars. This is the simple, for all you do, this Bud's for you. There's the beer can in the back of the car. Budweiser symbols on the front, and it's coming from Washington Road into Clearview Loop. Or if you wonder, Larissa, it's coming towards the fountain that's up there by the Shoemaker Place. And there was the door sides. They painted it a little different, but it was always, for all you do, Pittsburgh, this Bud's for you. And this was 1745, seen at South Hills Junction. And there it is during the last few days of streetcar operation on the city streets, just coming off the Smithfield Street Bridge, crossing Carson Street, head in a tunnel. I was told back in the 70s that traffic people from all over the world came to look at this intersection. It had no stop signs. It has no traffic lights. And you have cars going in four directions. Because remember, at one time, Sycamore Street came down and where the trolley tracks were, and you had to go onto the railroad. So it was a four-way intersection with trolleys cutting through at this diagonal. And surprisingly, there were hardly any accidents down here. Just amazing. 47 bore a lot of paint. It was always green and white with a lot of different ads. And this was about 1975, right before I came to Pittsburgh, and they were celebrating Franco Harris, run, Franco, run, and then, of course, watch ABC Go, which must have been a TV station, but there it is down in Tunnel Yard. And it also bore this scheme. It looks like it's pretty newly painted, still green and white, where Broadway spends the summer. And so that's the Civic Light Opera, still advertising. Remember, they were advertising in the 50s, and here they are still advertising. Here is a car on Wood Street, crossing Fifth Avenue by that really narrow restaurant with Coca-Cola. That was about 10 feet, 12 feet deep, and it was always busy. Then it advertised the United Fund. And on Grant Street down between the Boulevard of the Allies and Fort Pitt Boulevard. Always beautiful sun here in the morning. Then the Bugs Bunny show. Now, I had to wonder about this, and then I realized it was talking about the 1973 Allegheny County Fair. The fairs were still going on in South Park, and you could still take a streetcar down there. And the bug, something to do with the Bugs Bunny show was going on down there. It also reminds me of work, because sometimes when I was at the Port Authority, it just seemed like the office was the Bugs Bunny show. Things would just, it was chaos sometimes, and something would happen and you'd go crazy. But the final rendition that I remember before the paint came off was this one, the Green Hornet Trolley, was about the fire fund drive. Oh, sorry. They were trying to get a fire truck, for the Castle Shannon Fire Company. And so this car ran around, and this is up by the railroad station, by the Pennsylvania, turning from Grant on the Liberty. This was around for a little while. It's very simple boat ad, probably more significant when you look at the car behind it, yet another Budweiser car, but it is an ad car. And there it is, 1750. And there's a shot of it in Mount Lebanon by on Washington Road by Cedar Boulevard. Rumbling along, somebody who was up in a new parking garage, and they were able to get a good picture. So 51, that became an even fancier Budweiser car. It has fancier lettering on it, not block lettering, and got more symbols on it. And so we're still advertising beer. Interesting picture of it coming into town. The sun tells me afternoon. There goes a park and ride car out, and another car, a flat front car, boarding passengers right there on Fort Pitt Boulevard. And there is the third Budweiser car, red, white, and blue. Budweiser still all over the roof, but now a lot of beer cans. Nothing, no words, no slogans, just a lot of beer cans from end to end. And that is Cape May Trestle, and he's come off of it, and we're at what is now Fallowfield Station, Fallowfield Avenue. Here it is coming out of town, and apologize for the shadow. It's that type of day, but you get a good idea of what the beer cans all look like on this red, white, blue car. And there's the back. So there's a Budweiser symbol on the back as well. And a close-up shot of the Budweiser can. I'm sure some of you know what that looks like. Some don't. And of course, when you have all those cans, it's a good thing to recycle. And here's 1752 of all things, advertising recycling of aluminum cans. That was an early, before all the cardboard and paper, aluminum cans made some money, and they wanted you to recycle it. Down at my favorite portrait spot, Fort Pitt Boulevard, and down at Killarney Drive. 1752. Killarney Drive in the late afternoon was also a spot that held its sun. And you can get a half decent picture of the car. It's got a pantograph, of course, now. Okay, TV 53. I somehow was up in a steel building when this came rolling along, and so it's a gray day, and I'm sure the windows aren't pretty, but I snapped the shot, and it's Christmas time in about 1979, and I never got a lot of pictures with the actual lettering. I got a lot of pictures with the coloring on it. This powder blue car with kind of a zigzag rainbow on it. But there's the portrait in the yard. And it looked like that on both sides. And it was quite a beautiful car. 53 was the good times trolley. Because every night, as you see, they have a movie. I don't think they do now. It was a very beautiful car. It was just all that color on it. And there it is running around without its ads. But I still looked forward to finding it. The Clark car and another white yellow car is running inbound, but this is outbound. And there was a sighting here at Dormont Junction, and cars could pull into it. They would terminate in a Y, and if a car was already occupying the Y, they would wait in this sighting until that car pulled out on its scheduled time, and then the outbound car would pull in. They could let people off here if they wanted to. Simple ad for Pittsburgh's opportunities, industrialization. I don't understand what it was, but they're supporting humanitarian projects. Another one, not too far from home, Washington Road. That is St. Bernard's Roman Catholic Church. So we're just outbound from Bower Hill. And as the end of trolley service came about on the street, Mount Lebanon thought it would be very nice. This was April of '84, and they thought it would be nice to have a special day, have the trolley run back and forth in Mount Lebanon, give everybody a chance to get their last ride. They painted a car, 1758, So Long, Washington Road. And they would go from Clearview Loop up to Dormont Junction. And they would go, into the Y in what I call the wrong way. So that Y was always used where cars entered one way and then they backed up. They never went in the wrong way. And when they announced this, I told somebody that I think there'd be a problem. And what do I know? Shut up, you're George Gula. Well, I was right. It went in, it split the switch, and the whole neighborhood was out watching as the company figured out, whether it was off the track and then backed it up. And I think it only did this once or twice, but for going into the Y the wrong way. But obviously the track was just not set up for it. Here's my other favorite, 1760.
Oh, George, back on the Mount Lebanon car, could you talk a little more about the horn?
The horn? What horn?
Yeah. Well, someone asked, is that a horn or a speaker? And Ralph says locomotive horns on the So Long Washington Road car. See it right there by the.
Oh, Christ, you're right. I never saw that. I never noticed it. My guess is that that's not a horn, but it's like a microphone. And they may be talking out of that car. I mean, I couldn't spend the whole day up there. I think my wife had other things for me to do back in '84. But I did get up here for a little bit. I don't think that's an actual air horn used as a horn, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was a microphone of some kind where the operator could talk and that's blasting whatever they're saying out. That's the first time I've noticed that. I've been so busy always looking at the derailment. I never noticed that.
Yeah, Ray Janasco confirms it was a horn.
Wow.
Ralph says it was locomotive horns. They must have had a compressor on it. Interesting. We'll have to find some video.
I'm gonna have to find somebody that was alive in '84 that worked on this car. Yeah. Wow. Here's my favorite spot again. Good sun, but I walked out into the street to shoot 1761. It was a Channel 2 car. And it was another one that would run around without its ad for years after. But I thought it was quite attractive. And then there's a back view of it. So there's a here's to you on the back as well. And this guy's turning from Broadway at Beachview Avenue, going to go to Fallowfield Avenue and across the Cape May Trestle. And of course, there's something you don't see on the right now, cigarette ads, right? Just out there for all your kids to see. Camels. I think it was Ed Leibarger that asked why the government had to spend money to tell people about a cartoon camel. But anyway, here it is. Here's a close-up view of that. Beautiful car, just very beautiful. 2 shades, 3 shades of blue. And well, here's the Pittsburgh ad. Here's a quickie, 1762. The National Children's Dental Health Month is upon us in February of 1974, and they want you to kick the sweet snack habit. Now, I wonder how successful that was, but we're at South Hills. And the tunnel, notice the tunnel is still the old brick arch tunnel. So they really haven't begun doing a whole lot to make buses and trolleys both compatible to run through it. That's the way the old hole used to look. Another Pittsburgh paint ad, 1763, got a very similar ad. They painted some colorful words now, letters on the front, and they used that white again, and the chicken is still there. But now he's painting on the opposite side. That 44 had. Castle Shannon Boulevard is where the car is. And WDVE, another ad for WDVE on 1763. Again, the Pittsburgh paint ads are gone. WDVE 102 FM is there, and there behind you is a crowd of people waiting for some of their shuttle buses to take them home. They've gotten off the trolley, and that's usually where they waited. The bus would pull up on the side of the building. People would get on, and away it went. Now there's 1739 in the back, so you get to see another view of the WPNT car. But this blue car, for some reason, advertised South Hills High School. Now, South Hills High School, the building still exists, and it's sort of above on the hill above South Hills Junction. It's now a home. It's apartments, senior apartments. But at one time, everybody from Pittsburgh neighborhoods like Brookline, Wood, Beachview would all get off the school trippers and walk up the stairs, partly on the old Pittsburgh and Castle Shannon Railroad, and they would go to the high school. But I love this car. Very easy to see. Here was the U.S. Army car painted up in camouflage. And it's getting its portrait in the bright sun. Still not that easy to see, but a lot easier than out on the line. This car smacked more automobiles than any other car. And at claims department, when the questions were being asked, when they wanted to know, well, why'd you cross the track? Well, we didn't see it. Here it is without the trees. And if you just kind of stare at it, you're going to find that it's not that easy to see. In a cloudy day, in a rainy day, it was really very difficult to see. Here it is with trees around it, and we're in a more open area. But imagine coming down the library line or the Drake line, and you burst out of the trees at some unprotected crossing. And many of them they were not signaled before the LRT was built. And all of a sudden, somebody was going across and bang. And the Army would just say, we paint it, and they would pay for it. And this lasted for about a year. But the color scheme without the lettering was gone. When the Army car was gone, Pat had enough of that. Duquesne Light celebrated 100 years of its existence with 1767. And there it is again. It's the best spot to take the picture. So, and it was another car that would run around for years without its ad. Back in 1980, the Civil Air Patrol, the local Air Patrol squadron wanted you to join, and they put a simple ad on the white part of the car, and it asked you to join. So yeah, this was not uncommon. Not every car in Pittsburgh was specially painted, entirely painted. And there were a lot of these little things that probably didn't bring in that much money, but it did bring some revenue. These ads brought in revenue, and that was very important. There was an air car, I think, for this, and this 1771, talking about the Point Park U Trolley. Now, for those of you that are old Pittsburghers, you might remember Harold Geisenheimer established a whole system of U buses, which went to various colleges, and not just up in Oakland, but some of the other branch colleges that were out in the suburbs. And this was the U bus system. And we actually had two separate timetables that solely advertised the U buses. Well, Point Park College was downtown. I suspect it's Point Park University now, but it's still downtown. And so this was painted up to bring attention to that. 1776, obviously painted up in 1776. It was running when I got here, and the red, white, and blue car. It was the Spirit, 1776. You notice now the busway has all been painted or paved. That was a project that was ongoing to get the buses into the trolley tunnel, get them out of the Liberty tunnels where they were always caught in traffic. And so that was part of the project. One of those work cars is back there, and I thought that's the cab of the old dump car, M551, which is now at the Pennsylvania Trolley Museum. Here's a nicer shot of 1776. The old view of this is what it looked like at one time. Bus and trolley coming out of the tunnel. The tunnel entrance is right beyond the bridge, but between that low bridge and another higher railroad that you can see, Sycamore Street came down in there, and it was a stop sign. And so trolleys and buses are coming through, and the cars came in there. And one day, about 1977 or 8, tractor trailer got lost up in Mount Washington, and tried to get down what's known as the Burma Road, Sycamore Street, and lost its brakes. And a trolley had just gone by, when he somehow controlled it and then slammed into the wall. And he was a casualty. But that made the city think, well, we need to rebuild Sycamore Street. And now it comes off of Arlington Avenue. This was running when I got here, and I didn't get too many pictures of it because the first 2 or 3 years I was using a crummy Instamatic camera. But I did get a Manola 202 and was able to get 1 or 2 35mm shots before it disappeared. This is 1777, Pittsburgh someplace special. And that was what KDK would be saying on the radio at that time. And then there were 3 of these, and this was not the first one. 1779 was yet another flat front car. And usually these 3 flat front cars had all been in collisions. And you know how hard it is to try to manufacture a front end that looked like a PCC end, and they had run out of PCC ends. In fact, I thought one of the PCC ends from a Johnstown car had been obtained from the Trolley Museum at one point for a wreck. And Harold Geisenheimer was responsible for this. He had been traveling in Europe, and obviously that was the rage out there, flat front cars. And he had the engineer, Phil Castellana, design this, and we would wind up with 3. Now, the first car had a couple of tables inside, and it was a little fancier. The other 2 here, this one would have just normal seating. Junior achievement, just a typical red, white, red car down at Clarney Drive. But take a look at the front end, look above the roof, and you're going to see a second pole. And there were 3 cars that were fitted with backup controls and this second pole retriever on the front. And they were primarily to be used on the Drake line, where the track was so crappy that you got many derailments, and then all the service was stopped. And in this case, you could run the car, serve passengers as far down as the derailment, and then we would take off. I remember in 75, we had a line car fan trip, and the line car derailed out in the Drake line. And we actually watched one of these cars, or at least I watched one of these cars go through this reversing procedure and take off while we watched everybody try to re-rail that heavy line car. Here's another one. Notice the second car was cream and cream with red trim, and this is red with cream trim. And that's at South Hills Junction, obviously. Bob Smith Ford was a local auto dealer, and it was running around when I got here in 75. So, and it was this blue white thing. It was beautiful, you know, round the clock kid glove care. And they were down on Route 88 in Castle Shannon. I don't think they're there now. You can see all the older Pittsburgh unreconditioned Pittsburgh Railways cars, one of the Pat Gray cars. There's the Master Photo car in there, and just a whole bunch of stuff all sitting in front of the shop. The Allentown Civic, Hilltop Civic Group was a very instrumental group. They promoted the community, Allentown, which is up in the area that where Warrington Avenue runs through. They actually were very instrumental in having the Port Authority retain service on Route 49. Now, originally, because I remember Ollie Miller and I talking about this, originally the light rail line, they were going to scrap all that stuff on Arlington and Warrington Avenues because the engineers knew better. And when we got a hold of the plans, I think it was Ollie that said, well, what do you do when the tunnel's closed? Huh? Tunnel closed? Well, and we know, we've closed it many times since then. So they retained and eventually rebuilt the Arlington-Warrington line as a bypass. But it was the Allentown Hilltop Civic Group that actually got the Route 49 trolley to continue running. And here it is on detour on 12th Street at Penn Avenue on that July 4th in 1975. And there's the air car that I mentioned at Castle Shannon that also had the Point Park U trolley ad back in 1974. And they were both this nice dark green with a white border. And that was Pat's slogan. If you look at the top above the window, it's a whole new trip. That was a slogan that Pat was using. It was on their advertising cards inside the car. I never saw it on the side of a bus though. The Marriott car was 1785, and I never got to see this car in person. But here it is. You know, it advertised the city resort. So the Marriott was downtown, and they wanted you to come and get a room for a weekend, I guess. There's the administration building in the back. And the operators had their room up on top. Dispatcher was down on the bottom. Tills were pulled here and brought into the building. So also on 12th at Penn, 1788 was our bicentennial tour trolley. And it also advertised Joseph Horns. So yeah, kind of a public ad, you know, come ride Route 49, but shop in Horns too. And while you're there, root a toot for Pittsburgh. And I put another shot of this because if you notice the ad, they've moved things. Joseph Horn is on the other side with a star, and the rooted toot toot for Pittsburgh has been moved. But otherwise, it's still 1788, the red, white, and blue bicentennial trolley. And another red, white, and blue job, 1791, I think this was. This was the Happy Birthday America car. And it was still running around in 1982, 6 years after our birthday. There's one of the old 1900s behind us, West Mifflin bus. Looks like it's going to Brentwood. And we had the flags on this car, the red, white, and blue, white stars. South Hills was a good place to take pictures of these things. And then there was this. Kristen, here's your car.
My favorite.
Kristen loves this car. Port Authority worked with the Gateway Clipper organization, the guys that runs boats on the Mon and the Allegheny. And they came up with the program, you see it on the side of the car, that, for a fixed price, you got a ride on a Gateway Clipper boat. I'm sure it wasn't a big long ride, but they were running shorter ones. And you got to ride on Port Authority's Mon Incline, these beautiful views. And also you rode on a Pat trolley, which was Route 49, and that had some very pretty views as well. Now, the shop crews built the steamboat you see on top with the stern wheelers and steamboat cabin. And one thing though we weren't able to do, they realized at some point after they built it and painted it, put it into service, that because of the ventilation equipment hanging down from the trolley tunnel's roof, we can't run this car through the tunnel. And so it was solely assigned to Route 49. It was always on Route 49. When the program ended, 1794 it became a regular car, and it could once again go anywhere. And you can see coming down, it's behind one of the flat front cars, 79, I think. And coming down is the Jolly Trolley that's now not advertising its jolliness. Here's a good view of the Triple Tree. Very pretty, multiple colored letters, and you get a good idea of that roof with the steamboat wheel, stern wheel, and the cap, and that square, I guess, was the captain's cabin. And there is some chimneys up there, and it was just a little bit too tall to get through. And there it is, confined to Route 49. 49 would leave town, out the Smithfield Street Bridge, over Carson Street, up Arlington, down Warrington. Then it would lay over, it would go all the way down the busway and lay over in Palm Garden Loop, and then start its trip again. The busway's been paved here in 1978. And it's stuck, it's confined to the Hilltop route. Mr. Rogers aired on PBS very, very early, I think in the 50s. I think PBS may have been one of the first public radio stations out there. And Mr. Rogers was a favorite for years and years. And I think my kids watched him. And there are all the characters painted on the side. Mr. Rogers' trolley painted on the side. I believe he did an episode from the museum, and he was allowed to run the trolley. So I know he was very happy. The air cars, so everybody's sitting in the front, at least staring at each other, staring at a book. And it was 25 years old, the show, when this car was painted up. 1976. That's the original flat front car, and the one that Harold Geisenheimer opted to do. Coming from Europe, as I said, he had seen these flat front cars and decided we could make a front end and not have to go through the almost impossible task trying to make a rounded curved PCC end. So here it is in its advertising, Channel 4 Action News. And the sun tells me it is in the evening. Now Reach Cordick, the TV star, and he always seemed to have a joke, what I was told, about the fly-in fraction, and that was the route 7754. Now it was a fractionated route, and at one time, I believe it was the 54 that left Brentwood Loop, came down with the Carrick cars down to 18th and Carson. Then it turned right and went across what was then the Birmingham Bridge, and up into Oakland. Ran through Oakland and ran it, I think, into East Liberty and Bloomfield. And I believe it may have terminated somewhere in the Strip. Well, there was a 77 car also that left town, went in a big loop, and it went through the Strip, and it did a loop to come back into town via Fifth Avenue. And then they combined the route. And now when they opened the 16th Street Bridge, I think about 1928, they combined the 77 and the 54. And it became the 7754. Certainly not Pittsburgh's only fractionated route. I know there was a 44-48 in the South Hills, but this thing now ran everywhere but downtown. It was a big 3/4 circle from the north side, through North Side, East Ohio Street, across the 16th Street Bridge, the Strip, Bloomfield, Oakland. I mean, it was everywhere. The advantage of this was that you did not have to go downtown to make a transfer. A lot of times your connecting route is being crossed by the 7754. The disadvantage is, of course, that it was slower than molasses. And so Reach Cordick decided to start calling it the flying fraction because it was so damn slow. And so that's what it was. Eventually it would be cut back when they closed the Birmingham Bridge to heavy loads, including streetcars. Then it would be cut back to around Jamonville Street, somewhere in there, and only go from Oakland to the north side. And a shuttle bus, a lighter shuttle bus, would take you through the south side, up into Mount Oliver, and out the rest of the way to Brentwood Loop. The last car, 1799, the last air car to come out of the rehab program that was ongoing when I arrived here in Pittsburgh. A shop decided to honor Pittsburgh Railways, which of course was Pat's predecessor, trolley operator, and painted up this car essentially in Pittsburgh Railways colors. This is Westfield stop up in Beachview, and it's on the other side of the Cape May trestle from some of the shots you've seen. But certain times of the day, it was also a very good place to get a picture. The stop's much closer to Alton Street. That's Hampshire in the background. Westfield's a little bit up above, but why they call it Westfield, I don't know, but they do. And there's that car. Now, we had these, I think about 12. We started another rehab program to really modernize and rebuild 1700s, and they did this in the very narrow confines of Tunnel Shop, and they never got the 36 or so cars that they wanted. I think they were thinking of Library Drake operation with these cars once the light rail through Beachview opened up, and so we had these running around too, these white and red cars in the 4000 series, and this is at South Hills Junction. And then, of course, the light rail cars came, and that's a color scheme too. And Jim Roddy, who was our executive director, he had been a marketing executive in Atlanta, and I believe he was in marketing up here, decided that all of the cars needed to be the same color. And so we, the end of the painted car era was here. And the cars that were retained for service, primarily on the Drake line, were painted up in colors that matched those of the light rail. This is down on Caswell Drive in Bethel Park, and so he's probably an off-road car. I don't have a shot of the silver cars. Of course, they're still running right now, and I will stick one in when we're done. And the rest of this is all pretty much done. So this is the end. And I'm very happy you've all stayed with me. I hope it wasn't too long. And I am open for questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, George. Let me go ahead and mention a couple things here before we get to questions, including what's coming up. We don't have any lots of tongue twister after you haven't talked for a couple hours. We don't have any Trolleyologies coming up in August, but we do have the Washington County Fair. You can park and ride the trolley to the fair. It's going to be great. It's one of our busiest times of the year. We can run up to 7 trolleys at once. So definitely come out for that if you have an opportunity. And then this is kind of more of a save the date for September 24th. PTM members are invited to our Members Day, and we'll be also doing our volunteer awards that day. So thank you guys for joining us. Thank you so much to George. I had no idea that, there were so many painted cars, and I'm sure we didn't even see all of them. So
Oh, you haven't?
Yeah, so I'm gonna let everybody unmute themselves. I want to thank everybody again for coming, and thanks especially to those who donated. There were a couple comments in the chat that I did not address in a timely manner, but also feel free to start your videos now if you'd like. Let's see. Lori Rotterman said that community chest was like today's United Way, and Give Enough for 92 referred to the 92 agencies which they funded. So that was something you had talked about earlier in the program. Rich Krisak wants to know, why did Pittsburgh adopt the sealed windows? He remembers riding the cars in the summer and it being very hot.
I think the reason they adopted, and by the way, I'm seeing your screen, but I don't know that I see everybody. I was told that it was more expensive to put in crank windows, and Pittsburgh Railways was starting to see a loss of funding, automobiles showing up, lost their ridership. This was a way to cut costs, and they really thought that the fans would exhaust the air. Now, I was told another story by an old timer in the scheduling department when the 1700s were new. Thank you. And they had invited a group of officials to view the new cars. And one of the things they were going to do was turn on the fans. When they turned on the fans, apparently with Pittsburgh's dirt and soot, it went woof. And there was a pile of smoke in the car, which was soot. So.
Wow. And then
Hi, Catherine.
And Steve Barry, if you want to unmute and tell the comment that you put on there. I'm not sure if, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I thought that was really fascinating what you said.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I was over at Windber on a authorized tour last weekend, and the only painted car I could recognize over there was the Burger King car.
It's still there.
The only way I could tell it was because Home of the Whopper was still showing through all the graffiti on it. That's the only way I knew that it was the Burger King car.
Oh gosh, thank you.
That is fascinating.
1738's there too. It's collapsing on its frame.
Yeah, lots of nice comments coming in from the chat. Actually, one person comment, this probably could have been 2 presentations, which we could have done many different. Yeah, we might revisit that in the future. But Ralph says that all these colorful paint jobs were done with a brush, as Tunnel Car House didn't have a spray painting booth, which they didn't have until they moved to South Hills Village.
Wow.
It would have been interesting if we had some photos from like people actually painting, or where all the painting happened. Have you ever seen any photos like that, George?
I haven't. No, that's a place that they let you wander a little bit through the shop, but it really was a safety issue. And they were worried. That was a very narrow shop. The floors they weren't really paved. I mean, there was sort of brick or stone, and it was very wavy. And it wasn't much room between the cars. It's amazing that they got these 4,000 cars built under those conditions. So, because they would have to they would cut the top window area off the car, and then they would wind up rebuilding the bottom, and then they would have to take the window area and put it back on, and how they got it done down there, I don't know. They were artists down at the shop.
I thought it was really interesting. I don't know if there's any like font nerds on this Zoom, but how the lettering has changed through the years. I thought that was really interesting, how intricate it used to be, and now it's so much more simple.
Well, I think you'll find that the font changed for almost every ad.
That's true.
And that was probably at the whim of either the ad company that had drawn it up, or the customer that was paying for it. But having Pittsburgh be my introduction to transit systems, after that kaleidoscope of paint jobs, everything else, everywhere else looks kind of dull.
Yeah. Well, and don't forget, we're now Pittsburgh Regional Transit. And I've only seen little bits of, I don't get the newspaper, which is only published twice a week anyway, but
Hmm.
what I heard is that the current executive director, Catherine Kellerman, I believe, wants everything to be painted up the same. And so,
Boring.
so it'll take them, they estimate 7 years. So the question is, since transit executives tend to move around as the wind blows, how long will she stay before she gets a better job offer, or before Mr. Fitzgerald, our county executive, is unelected, and somebody comes in and puts their person in? I mean, so there may be a story behind this as they repaint things even again.
Hey, George,
Just want to be
George,
like
Hey,
everyone else. That's what it is.
Yeah.
George, Ray Lanaba. Got a question for you. I noticed on the 1700s, the rehab cars, I didn't see any, the air cars. I didn't see any brake rigging. Did they change over to a shaft brake or what on those cars?
Oh, geez. Now you're asking the wrong person. This is somebody that doesn't spend any time in the shop down at the
Okay.
museum. So I don't know but Ralph might know something.
I know.
They went to drum brakes, I think, with the 1600s, I think.
Okay, I know. St. Louis had air cars without the
Hey,
brake shoes on the wheels, and I
I
think they had
just had
trouble.
an idea. Do you have Fred Schneider's book on the PCC? That might provide some insight.
Yeah, I do. I have the books.
Yeah,
I'll have to
might be in
go
there. I'm
review them. Yeah.
Fred covered everything, and I'm sure he talked about the brakes on the 1600s. So
Well, I know the city of St. Louis had the shaft brakes on some of the air cars, but and I don't think they worked out that well from what I read. I don't know. I have to go back and look at it again.
George,
Yeah.
Ed Kohler here. I want to thank you for a wonderful presentation. And Kristen, I want to thank you for organizing the thing. And I also want to publicly thank Kristen for appearing with the Sunrise Trail Division NMRA last week when we did a presentation on the Pennsylvania Trolley Museum.
Ed,
Thank you all,
very much
folks.
for that compliment. I do appreciate that.
Any other comments or questions for George?
I think we could easily do another hour or two.
I know, I was thinking the same.
At least another hour. Well, do you
Yeah,
remember, how
definitely.
many of you remember Paul Harvey? He had the rest of the story. I don't know, maybe we try to find other things and shove them in for a short show, or kind of like a cartoon before the main show.
All right. Last chance for questions or comments. All right, and hearing none, this was recorded, so this will be on YouTube. I'm a little bit behind in editing Trolleyologies, so I think this will be the third one that I need to put up. So they will be on, don't worry, they're all saved and recorded. But yeah, it'll be a couple weeks before I can get it up, but stay tuned for that. All the list of all the previous recordings that we have is on our website. I shared the link in the chat a couple minutes ago. It's the same page where you can register for upcoming Trolleyologies. So check that out if you are craving some trolley facts and trivia and storytelling, because we have some awesome presenters. There's a lot of them who come back and watch the other programs. I really, really appreciate that. And again, if you do have something you want to talk about in the future about Pennsylvania trolleys, the trolley era, or stories about our collection, you can reach out to me at the email address that is in your confirmation email, or you can find my email address on the patrolley.org website. Thank you again to everybody for coming. Thank you again.
Kristen,
Yes.
Jim Boylan's got a question in the chat.
Yeah.
About trolley fare. Sure. Yeah, you can ask that. Yeah, what's the question?
I'm trying to unmute.
Oh, there we go.
Now I guess I did. One of the reasons I reviewed was that excellent publications. I haven't seen it in a long time. Is there a class? Should I be buying a different kind of membership?
Were you expecting one by mail, or have you
Yes.
gotten the ones via email?
No, haven't had it in the mail for a long time and wondered if it's still published.
So
Or how to get it.
what we did actually a couple years ago is we transitioned our trolley fare to digital. And we had sent out a survey. If you still wanted it by mail, please respond. I'll make a note here that you would like it by mail instead. We did send it out. We do send it out via email when it's ready. So
I get mine in the mail and it's been coming.
Right.
yeah. So if you want to send me an email, Jim, at the email you got, you can just respond to your Trolleyology confirmation and it should go to me. And I'll get you sorted out.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Kristen,
Yes.
can you, I know you did this before. Can you give me a copy of the chat? So I can.
Sure will. Yep. I have it set to save automatically. So I'll
Thank you.
send that to you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, everybody. Thanks for those who donated, and stay tuned to our website, social media. I will let you know when we have the next one scheduled. Have a great night.
You have a great
Thank
night.
you, Christian.
Get
Have
back
a
up there
Christian,
one of
have a
these
good
days.
night.